Fun fact, in film school, I was actually tutored by Bob Bierman, who directed Nic Cage in Vampire's Kiss. Welcome back, Nic Cage fans, to my review of Renfield. Because who doesn't love Nic Cage and immediately buys into the concept of him playing Dracula? It's a match made in hell. Renfield, having grown sick and tired of his centuries as Dracula's familiar, decides to try and find a new lease on life and maybe even redemption when he falls for the feisty, perennially angry traffic cop Rebecca Quinn in a film that genuinely offers a fresh take on a Dracula story. And I don't know that every Nic Cage loves when he goes zany and bonkers in a performance, but regardless of how he ever felt about any of his overall films in the last 30 years, the man has always fully committed. And Renfield is no different for Nicolas Cage, a film that has so many interesting aspects of it when it comes to the film itself. But one of my favorite behind the scenes peculiar aspects is director Chris McKay, who is slowly but surely building such an interesting directorial resume for himself, having done the Lego Batman film and the Tomorrow War. Two films vastly different from one another and vastly different from Renfield. And I would generally rank Renfield right in between those two films, below Lego Batman and above Tomorrow War. A big reason for that is Nic Cage as Dracula. First and foremost, he is not in the film as much as I wish he was. Dracula is not the lead character. He is the villain of this story. He is the toxic part of this relationship he has with his familiar, which is a generally captivating dynamic you are captivated by throughout this film because of Nic Cage's full commitment and Nicholas Hoult's full commitment. The two have worked before under very different circumstances, but their chemistry is just so genuine. And both of them dial it up to 11, both in their own unique ways. There's a very specific cadence to, obviously, a Nic Cage performance where he just goes full camp, full wild. And there's also a very different cadence to Nicholas Hoult, who also commits himself to being this very codependent, feeling trapped kind of character. But both of them just really work as the two sides of this relationship. And again, Nic Cage is not in the film nearly as much as I wanted him to be, but whenever he is, it is campy glory. Nic Cage, it is at his campiest, probably since Vampire's Kiss. Fun fact, in film school, I was actually tutored by Bob Bierman, who directed Nic Cage in Vampire's Kiss.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z! Ha!
And what he brings to the role is so unique. It's just so memorable. While he's playing a character that has been played by hundreds of actors throughout the history of cinema, and he manages to have this unique, memorable in his own way take on the Lord of Darkness. And the film itself also has this reverence for the character and his significance. There are sequences that are in black and white, 4:3, paying homage to old Dracula classics, in particular the Bela Lugosi classics, and Nic Cage manages to look exactly like him. It's almost uncanny, but it lends itself to the humor of the film. And the humor in this film is very particular. This is a horror comedy where it balances this really wild, bonkers humor with over-the-top cartoonish violence. Nic Cage is playing Dracula 100% straight. Everyone in this film is giving 100% straight performances, which in part is what makes it really funny, but the world this film is set in is not the real world. This is a heightened reality where violence and the gore is cartoonish. If you don't like your gore to be super over the top, to come out of a cartoon that is so unrealistic, this is not for you. The film clearly, surprisingly for me, has a lot of gore, but it is not in the same way as, say, Evil Dead Rise, where it's really dark, it's moody, and it's hardcore in its violence. This is funny violence. This is violence to make you laugh, where someone will get their arms ripped off and geysers of blood will gush out to everyone's face, sometimes to the camera. That's what makes this violence funny, where everyone is playing it straight. Oh, like, oh my god, I got my arms ripped off. But it's such a cartoon in the way the blood is gushing out. That's what makes it work, because everything just comes together with the humor, with the violence, and you have all the classic Dracula iconography, all these classic monster movie aspects, but at its core, it's a toxic relationship between an employee and an employer. And that's what makes this Dracula story in particular so refreshing. And you are genuinely compelled by Renfield's conflict in this film, where he's so trapped in this relationship. He has been trapped for so long. He has become so codependent that he goes to these support groups to try and find victims for Dracula, and he gets those victims to be other codependent people's monsters since he can't get rid of his. This is not a spoiler, by the way. This is the first 5 minutes of this film. This is Renfield's mission statement as the film starts. You get to really feel for this guy. You get to really be captivated for this performance, but get caught up in the zaniness that he gets entrapped in. Now, not everything works, sadly, when it comes to the characters, the relationships, the humor, the violence. All of them really comes together for a fun time. But there are story elements, there are plot elements that don't necessarily feel as refreshing as everything else, particularly when it comes to Awkwafina's Rebecca Quincy character. Because let me know if you heard this before. She is a legacy police officer trapped in a dead-end job, but what she really wants to do is go out there to take revenge for her father and take down the actual criminals committing real crimes in New Orleans, part of this crime family, while her department doesn't allow her to do it. They just cut her legs off from under her. And then there are corrupt elements in the police squad involved with crime families. You've seen all of it before. And I don't mind formulaic plots as long as in execution something is interestingly done with it. And it really isn't in here. For all the refreshing takes and refreshing angles on the Dracula story and his familiar and the humor and all that, there are elements in this film that just feel too familiar, not only in concept, but in execution. What works about Awkwafina is her budding romance with Renfield, because they genuinely share great chemistry with one another. And what comes from that relationship as it develops is genuinely interesting. But those more familiar, those more formulaic story threads, as they come together with the rest of the film in the third act, just bring it down quite a bit and almost interfere. When the film focuses on that relationship between Renfield and Dracula, that is when it shines. That's when you are genuinely invested and laughing your ass off, not only at the humor, at the puns, at the jokes, and all that, but also at the violence that is so fun to watch. It's just not every element in the film feels as brand new, feels as, oh, I've never seen this before. In a film that is also genuinely really well shot with neon lighting and the way characters are depicted with colors and the motifs, generally very well made. I just wish another jab was taken at the script, particularly at the police and the corruption, the crime families elements of it all that just slightly bring down the overall experience. Nevertheless, as I dive into my final thoughts on Renfield, it is time for the fun part, where you start the conversation in the comments below. What is your favorite Nic Cage film, and what is your favorite version of Dracula? Also, if you are enjoying this review, there's many more like it right up here, or if you just want to talk more movies and TV, this is the place to be. Consider clicking that subscribe button, and you won't miss any future conversations on your favorite movies and TV. Renfield's bonkers tone, campy humor, and bizarre angle match the zaniness Nic Cage brings to the role of Dracula in this wild story about toxic relationships. The over-the-top gore, humor, chemistry, and action all have a delightfully wild bite and manage to rise above the more conventional and cliched story threads, resulting in a winning big studio horror comedy. I'm giving Renfield a B. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to start the conversation with your favorite Nic Cage moment and your favorite Dracula film in the comments below. Big shout out to my channel members for always supporting the channel, and I'll be back very soon with more videos. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.